Have you ever wondered how to get your beats to sound professional to compete on platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and SoundCloud? Yes, SoundCloud is still a real thing. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am your boy Touchtone DSG, and today's video I'm going to be going over my easy to follow process in a couple of steps. First, we're going to learn how to mix beats in a timely process. Secondly, what to look for, how to clean up your beat, get it ready to be mastered. Also, I'm going to show you my process and what plugins I use. If you do not have these plugins, don't worry. I'll try to tell you some substitute to help you out depending on what program you're on. Basically, how to get your beats knocking and sounding like the pros do. This is not going to be a super detailed mix. If you do want that video, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I can do one. So with all that said, let's jump into it. So here on the screen, we do have Ableton, and I got a track here. It's like a Southern trap type beat, and I'll let you hear it so you can understand what we're working with today.
Touchtone the sound god.
That's me. All right, so that's a pretty dope beat. Nothing too crazy, just pretty groovy, right? God, I said groovy. So I'm gonna take you through the tracks here. And first I put everything in the mix bus called Ableton. I just group everything together, which is Command G. And I just kind of go through there. As you see, all the plugins are turned off, and that's for a reason, because I wanna take you through this pretty briefly. So on the first track, we got the intro, nothing crazy there. Oh, side note, if you do see the plugin Soothe 2, just know that the oversampling I usually use is on Ultra, but for the sake of the video, I've turned it down to normal so we don't get any clicks and pops. When you're working with samples, first thing you want to do, at least what I do, is I go to the Pro Q3 and I just kind of roll off all the low end. Take a listen. So that's what it sounds like. I just roll off the low end so it doesn't get in the way of like the kicks and the 808s or anything that is in the low presence of the beat that I'm using. So I'm gonna cover the main players today. So if you have snares or percussions in your track, which most tracks do, you want to roll off that low end kind of the same way I did with that sample so it doesn't compete with the low end presence. For the clap group, it's kind of the same thing here. I grouped all my claps and snares together because it's easier for me to do it that way and control it. It's kind of like a mix bus for those, or a drum bus for your percussions and things. What I did is my snares and my claps are here, and I just kind of ran it through the SSL channel strip. If you guys are not familiar with this, I did do a video on that, and I'll put it right here so you can check that out. Same thing here, rolled off the lows, and then I hit it with some Soothe. So this is what it sounds like. And without. See? Now make sure you're listening on some headphones or some good monitors so you can hear the detail. It's very subtle, but in the track that plays a big part. And then with my hi-hat, I usually do the same thing. I roll off the low end, and I did use the channel strip to do that. Most of these plugins, if I have links for them, I'll try to link them in the description below for you guys. So the same thing follows with my shakers, my open hat, and my crashes. And to be quite honest, I could have put that all in a group. I usually treat those kind of the same. I might have a crash poke out here and there or something so it's above everything else, but pretty much highs are usually easy and then you kind of compress those, but we'll get to that. Next up, I usually start with my kick. So as you see here, the kick was a high quality kick. When you're choosing your sounds, that's one thing I do want to stress, is make sure you're using high quality sounds. That's going to make your mixing process so much easier. So as you see here, I kind of didn't have to do anything. I rolled off a little bit of lows here after the 20 hertz because that usually creates flutter. Then secondly, I gave it a little boost around 118, and then I took some mud out around 260. usually around the 260 to 300 mark. I usually take that out depending, and I usually sweep for those frequencies to see what's muddy and just take it out. Once again, I ran this through the channel strip, and with the channel strip too, that's really basic. I just used some little light compression on here, maybe 3 decibels of gain reduction, so listen to it. Yeah, so it just really controls it, and honestly, just engaging the UC1 is sometimes good enough for me. Next, I have the 808, and on the 808, I usually do a couple of things depending on the 808. Once again, this was a high quality 808. So first off, I'm using the Pro Q3, and I just rolled off some lows. Once again, the 20s. I know you're like, well, don't do that with your 808s. I do that because I like my bottom end clean, because if I'm gonna boost this in my master, I don't want to boost any flutter, so I usually cut. So let's take a listen at that. See, when I took that off, it just kind of went everywhere. It wasn't controlled. I like my stuff controlled. Next up, I have the Air EQ by Slate. This is kind of my secret weapon. I love this thing. And without. Yeah, that thing adds some weight. And all I really do is just come to the Air EQ and turn this knob from 0 to just like this. So see without it how thin it sounded. So yeah, I just kind of maybe come to 2 o'clock position here. Done. Oh, it works wonders on like heavy 808s. It does really well with those. And really the next plugin is just the imager on the bass. And I know what you're thinking. It's the bass that should all go down the middle. Yes and no. So I do certain parts of the bass. Check this out. I do bring this down the middle, the lows. The other lows, kind of down the middle here. But then the high parts of the bass, I spread wide. So it goes from sounding like this to this. Yeah. Pretty simple, right? So with all that being said, I know I said I'm not gonna make this a super long video and it's not gonna be a mixing tutorial. We're gonna go ahead and get to the mix bus here and the things that I throw on my mix bus. Once again, very brief. First thing I'm throwing on my mix bus is a utility. Now, it depends on the track. I usually listen. I don't just go for -6 decibels or -12 decibels and that's it. I like my stuff to knock and I listen to it. And if the kick is a little high and it's at a -3, but I like the way the kick and the 808 is sounding over the rest of the music, this is when I use a utility. One side note, so there's one piece of advice that I can give you if you're a young producer or even a seasoned producer. Most seasoned producers probably already know this. There's a basic technique that I use with the kick, bass, and snare. It's called KBS. So my kicks are higher than my bass. Usually my kicks are like -8, basses are like at -13, and then my snares are like at a -10. All my other percussions, as far as like hi-hats or whatever, they're usually in the -16 to -20, so is the rest of my instruments. And my vocals are between, you guessed it, my kick and my bass. If you use that as a guideline, your starting point with mixes is going to come together just like that. It's going to be super fast and things are going to start to flow easier. So KBS, remember that. Kick, bass, snare, and vocals right in between the kick and the bass. All right, so without the utility engaged, this is where my headroom is. So I'm going to engage my utility here. Pretty much got the headroom I want, and the kick is still smacking and the bass is still smacking. Normally, I usually sidechain the kick to the bass, but I didn't in this instance. I sidechained the kick to the actual track this time without the pumping effect, and it sounds great. So let me show you. So right here, we have just the Ableton stock compressor. And as you see, when I engage it, I go to my sidechain, turn on the sidechain, choose what I want to choose from, go to kick. Check this out. The threshold, the gain reduction that I'm going to be getting is very, very minimal, but it makes a big difference. Listen to it. Wonders, right? It just like opened up the track and the kick is living right there, man. Sounds great. So another process that I do is I run it through like a simulation of hardware. Most times I do use tape, but in this instance, I'm using a plugin called Front DAW or Front of DAW. I love this thing. Check it out. This is without it. And this is with it. Yeah, sounds great. So I'm just basically creating a signal flow here, right? So I have my utility, then I'm running through some tape. What's the next thing? You got it. The bus compressor. And the bus compressor that I'm choosing to use should be no surprise. It is the UC1. I love this thing. Yeah, so my attack is super slow. My release is super fast. I'm getting just a little bit of gain reduction here. I got my side chain on. Most times I usually do like a 2-to-1, but this time I'm doing a 4-to-1 because it sounded good to my ears. That's another thing. Do what sounds good to you. If it sounds good and people are like, hey, this sounds great, just do it. Don't overthink this. Don't make it hard. Next thing I got going is soothe. Why soothe? Because soothe really takes out a lot of the harshness in the beat. And this is what I mean by this. Check it out. Did you hear that top end just become a little bit more controlled? That's what I'm talking about. That's why I love this thing. I'm using a basic preset called Balance to the Grammys. That's the preset for me. Sometimes I go through some other ones, say goodbye to the NS10s or something like that, but this one sounded good. All right, later on down the chain, I'm using the isotope imager, the Ozone 9, and I'm using it kind of like what I did on the bass, but this time on the track. And then last but not least, I'm just running into a clipper, like a soft clipper, a standard clipper. I'm using the Soft Pro clip. I'm using that, and this is what we get. So it got louder, but I'm clipping all of those other transients that's coming through that usually spikes everything. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. I love it. Now that we went over my mix in kind of an overview manner, I'm gonna take you into my mix session to show you how I got there. Now we're in Ableton, and here's the track that we bounced out. All right, so that's the track there. And the first thing I usually do is I bring it into a mix session and I clean it up. So this is the BX Digital 3 by Brainworks. And what I usually do is just I clean up the sides. I love the mid-side function on this plugin. Listen. All right, so that's cool. And what I usually do is I roll out the lows on the sides. I'm gonna just show you really quick how I do it. So did you hear when I took off the low part that all the lows were clouding up the sides of the mix there? I'm not a fan of that. I kind of like my mixes a little bit cleaner. And with this, you can do that pretty easy. That's the sides. This is the mids. Hear that? So I'm taking that out. And I do that for each spot of that frequency. Once again, this could be a whole video in itself. I hope I'm not moving too fast. Make sure you save this. So this is what it sounds like with the plugin on. And off. weird thing. Even though I took out lows, when I engaged it, it sounded like it hit harder because you're controlling the lows and they're not fighting each other and they have room to just come out and boom, be in people's faces. That's what we want. Just like the pros. So the second plugin here is the Shadow Heels compressor, and I just do this to control the mix. I'm not trying to compress hard. Let's listen. So as you see, I'm getting less than a decibel of gain reduction, maybe half of a decibel, but that is enough to control the whole mix. I hope you heard that. Make sure you're listening with some great headphones or some really good monitors. Also with this, I do have the sidechain engaged, so it's not affecting my lows, just the highs. And it's just keeping everything super level, just keeping it balanced. That's what I like. Third on this list, I'm using the Weiss EQ from Softtube, and it's just the typical Pultec stuff to where I'm going the smiley face, as they call it. I boost the lows, then I boost the highs, take a little dips out of the mids a little bit. Check it out. Yeah, man, that really speaks for itself. That thing sounds great. All right, fourth on this list is another plugin made by Softtubes and UAD. I'm using the UAD version. This is Tone Lux Tilt. And all I do with this is kind of control the low end of my mix and the top end of my mix. Let's listen to it. So I don't know if you heard that when I engaged it, I take the tilt off because it comes default on, and then I put in the filter. And on the filter, I just go to 20 hertz right here, roll off, boom. And then the top is 20 also. All right, next up, again, you guessed it, Soothe 2. Why? Because it's dope. And this mix, I felt like when I'm doing these things down here, especially adding the EQ, it added a little bit of harshness to it. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but once again, let's listen to it with it on and with it off. Perfect. I love that. It just sounds good, smooths out everything. It smooths out everything. Yeah, I did that. Soothe. All right, last but not least is the limiter. I use the Pro L2. So with the Pro L2, my goal is to get to 14 LUFS if I'm putting this on streaming platforms. That is streaming platforms, and I'll show you why. So we're gonna go to this button down here, loudness, click that. It's default, it's like K14 or something. I forget which one it is, but I go to loudness, and once I click loudness, this is going to change. Usually this is like 24 LUFS. I'm going to streaming, which is 14. This is without it. If you also noticed, I am getting more than 14 LUFS. When I bounce these out, if it's going to a streaming platform, I am at 14 loops. If it's going to somewhere like YouTube, SoundCloud, something like that to where it's got to compete against other things that are loud, I'll usually get like a 10 LUFS to like 9.6, usually no more above that, because with that you can compete. So the Pro L2 is pretty cool in my opinion. I really like it. If you don't have that, there are some other limiters. I'm not a fan of the Ableton's limiters. I know there are some free limiters out there that can get you some really good results too. Maybe I'll do a video about that. Let me know in the comments below. If this video was helpful to you, make sure you like and subscribe, and also share this with someone that maybe you're a rapper and you want to share it with your engineer. Maybe share it with your engineer or your producer. I'm pretty sure this can help them out. And I know that you've seen throughout the video that I use the SSL UC1 a lot. That is one of my favorite plugins. It's a joy to work with and it sounds great. If you are interested in that video, check it out right here. Also, check out some of my music that I put out on Spotify. Also, remember, TBR, thoughts become reality. TBR gang over here, baby. TBR gang. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.